video on something I want to have a faff around with. So, I need to fix the cooker. So, I made a lasagna, and I had quite a lot of celery. But I'm just doing some drying up while I'm talking. Multitasking. So I made lasagna, and I had excess amounts of celery. So I used the excessive leftover celery, and just kind of thought, well, I'll just put it in the lasagna, and just kind of like just to kind of use it up, so we don't have to throw it away. And there was a little bit of meat in the lasagna, not too much, but the celery made it really, really, really kind of like meaty flavoured, you know, like a savoury umami type of thing. So I kind of thought, can we make a bit of an essence of celery, and what will it taste like? So that's kind of like my thought, and I just kind of thought what we'll do is we'll make a bit of celery stock, just a simple celery stock, no other vegetables in it, and then we'll taste it, and then we'll maybe reduce it and see how it tastes. So celery is mostly water anyway. So what I've done is we've got, well, it's about 2.5 heads worth of celery, but it's about 1.2 kilograms worth of celery, and then I put in 500 milliliters of water in there. And what we're going to do is just steam it, cook it, type of thing. I hope it's not catching on the bottom of there. Don't think it. Not burning, is it? Move that around. So we'll cook the celery in a little bit of water, because it's mostly water, if we cook it in a lot of water, we'll end up losing the flavour of the celery into the water. So the less water we cook the celery in, the more concentrated the flavour of celery will be. Although that's not always the case with making stocks. So when you're making beef stocks, I'm going to get off subject as always, but when you're making beef stocks, you need more water in a stock pan than you actually think, because the water can only absorb so much gelatin and flavour from the bones in the stock. So you need to maximise the amount of flavour and gelatin and other things that you get from the bones. To maximise getting as much out of those bones as possible, you actually need to put in more water than you actually think. You can't get so the theory is, my always theory was, which was wrong, so if we're going to add 2 litres of water to a stock, why don't we just add 1 litre of water, and then we'll make a more concentrated flavour of stock. That doesn't work like that. You need the 2 litres of water to actually absorb all the flavour from the bones. But that's not the same with celery, because it's just mostly, it'll be about 95% liquid, well, celery. So what we just need to do is we just need the water in there to cook it, and then we're going to puree it. That's me holding the stick blender. That's me holding that, pureeing it, and then we're going to pass it through a sieve, and then we'll be left with a liquid. Once we've squeezed out the liquid from the leftover celery solid, and then we'll taste that liquid, and then we'll decide what we're going to do with it. If we're going to reduce it further so it concentrates the flavour of the celery, or if we're just going to leave it as is. But I'm just kind of curious. I think celery is naturally kind of quite salty, so it might go a little bit salty, but we'll see. I'm just curious. And I always kind of think if I'm curious about something, we'll have a go and we'll video it, and then things tend to lead in interesting places, you know. So just because this seems a bit ridiculous what I'm doing, it might lead somewhere even more interesting. So cook these, get them soft, puree them, put them through a muslin cloth, squeeze out the excess liquid from the pulp, and then we'll see what the stock tastes like. So we've given it a puree, a cook and a puree, and you see how liquid that is. So celery is mostly I'm just seeing that it's not properly pureed. So just through a cloth. The cloth's clean. It's just a bit stained because I'm forever straining things through cloths and things, so they just tend to get strained with either berries or wine or something else. So, but what it'll do is it'll just let all the liquid pass through it and all the solid are left behind, and then we'll get, because it's in a cloth, then we can give it a good old squeeze and steam up the camera, and we'll get as much liquid out as possible. It doesn't taste much at the moment, but we'll see. So if we was being really frugal, what I could do is we could put that vegetable puree into a soup. If I was making vegetable soup, I'd put that in the soup. In fact, I might save it for vegetable soup. And we'll see if we can make a vegetable soup out of it. So that'll be another part of the video, won't it? Yeah, I've got some onions, so we'll see what kind of soup it makes. Because I do like the idea of 2 bites of the cherry. So you can hear that the liquid's passing through the cloth. What happens is that it's the outside of the pulp here will release all its liquid into the container below, but the inside of the pulp, this bit here, will still remain relatively wet. So what we need to do is, when it's cooled or cool enough to touch, we need to move things around so the outside there, which is already looking quite a lot drier than the inside next to it, so we move the outside away from the outside into the inside and move it all around, and then we can squeeze more liquid out of it. But are you interested in that? I am. It's cooled and I've been giving it a squeeze, so because I keep giving it a squeeze and moving it around, we can see that that is all the pulp that is left there. So there's still a little bit of liquid in that, but we can go on forever, can't we? You know. What's that taste like? Not that much flavour left in it. Kind of lost. It's got a little bit of celery flavour, but lost most of its flavour, which means that most of the flavour will have gone into the liquid underneath. I mean the scales and the container, and then we can get an idea of how much we've made for the yield and all that kind of stuff. I have to weigh things off camera because that board isn't flat, so we'll see how much liquid we've got underneath. Just easier to weigh it rather than get another container. So I suppose you can put it in a measuring jug, or you can just have another container that's exactly the same size and put that on the scales, tear it off, and find out that we have 946 grams, millilitres, so that's about 950. So we can work that out what it is. So we've kind of lost some liquid through evaporation. Can we just? No, I don't think we'll be able to. I don't want to quickly wash it up. How much? Out of interest, how much pulp is there? So it won't be a proper representation. We'll have lost some liquid through the cooking process, but there is about 200 grams worth of pulp left over. So there is a little bit. We can work out what we've kind of lost. There was still some liquid in there and evaporation, all that kind of stuff. So how does this taste? It's murky, but we know. So all right, okay, that's nice. That's nice, is that? We're gonna reduce that and see if we can intensify the flavour. So we've kind of got the celery essence, but none of the kind of like pulpy type thing. So I wonder if we can use that as a flavour enhancer. If we kind of think like there's things that are like enhance flavour. So like salt's one of them, sugar to some kind of degree, things like Worcestershire sauce and fish sauce, mushroom ketchup, like all these kind of all these foods that have got lots of umami in them are all kind of like dish improvers. So let's reduce it and let's see if we can it will improve a dish without kind of tasting too much of celery, if that makes sense. That makes sense. I think this video is turning into something else, but they always do. They always kind of start with an idea and then they kind of expand off in lots of different kind of ways. So we'll heat that, reduce it by half, and then we'll have a look at it. And I'll keep that, and I'll make some soup with it next week and see what we think of that. I think I've reduced it by half, and through boiling we have made it clearer because the sediments separated from the liquid. Just burning myself. How's it taste? Well, I need to taste it hot. Although this is slightly pointless, I've just brushed my teeth, so my taste bud's going to be a little bit off. All right, okay. So there's still it's intensified the flavour, so it's got a more intense flavour, but it's not kind of like double the celery taste to it, which is interesting. I think that would add a real meatiness to a dish, you know. I think that would add a real meatiness to a dish. So let's cool that, and we'll see what it tastes like when it's cool. We'll just I'm not bothered about it being clear. What I think is important is if we just swirl it around, then we'll get the bits from the outside of the pan which are like more concentrated. So right into there, and I'll let that cool, and we'll see what it tastes like when it's cold. Let's just give it another taste before we put it in the fridge. Yeah, so it's kind of got a bit of a woody kind of flavour to it. So I don't think I want to reduce it any more than that. There's slight sweetness to it, slightly woody, a little bit of a celery taste, but not load. So we'll use that in some kind of dish, and we'll see how it improves the flavour. I think. Let's cook this rice using this celery essence stock. So, well, that's interesting. That's interesting. It's gone a little bit gloopy. That was interesting. That was interesting. What's happened there? What's happened there? Look at that. I don't know if you can see that. That's gone a little bit gloopy. That's interesting, isn't it? Has it gone off? No, it's fine. I wonder if there's pectin in it. It's gone a little bit gloopy. That's interesting. We'll have to explore that at some point, won't we? Right, so let's cook it in some rice. So what I've done, because I seized the opportunity that was faffing around with rice a few months back, and I wanted to see if I could add more flavour to rice by toasting before I cooked it. It works, but what happens is the rice wants to break up, and it doesn't matter if you're using cheap rice or more expensive rice. It kind of wants to break up. I think probably what it does is the dry frying process or the toasting process wants to break down the outside of the rice, kind of like form cracks in it, and then I think the cooking process then kind of expands on those cracks and makes the rice fall to bits. So I kind of thought, well, maybe frying the rice in a little bit of oil would make a difference. So I've toasted this rice in some oil before we started, just as part of a little bit of interest. I'm going to eat it. It's just a little bit of experiment, so we might as well do two things at once. That'll save me making another video. Although we've already decided that I'm going to have to make another video about celery stock. So I'm just using the cheap rice from the supermarket because I think it's important to know that we can still have delicious food using cheaper ingredients. And I think if we can, and if you're just wanting to, and you can still use the same recipe with expensive ingredients. But you just have to work a little bit harder with cheaper ingredients. So I fried an onion in some chicken fat, so there's going to be a little bit of flavour in that, and there's obviously going to be the chicken fat that I fried the rice in. So there's probably a little bit too much chicken fat in there. Now that's going to kind of give like a flavour to it. I'm not going to put any salt in. So it was an onion. It was about 200 grams. About 200 gram onion. Maybe 150. Let me just weigh in here. I should know these things. I am 150 grams worth of onion. There's 220 grams worth of rice, and there's about 440 grams worth of the celery stock. So I always go on double quantity of liquid to rice. Different people do different things. It's always worked for me. So cook that slowly, sort of slowly braise, and then we'll kind of see what flavour we'll kind of get from it. So, and I think it will be a case of up to the boil and then really slow simmer to make it cook gently. We don't want to boil it too bit. So as soon as that comes up to a boil, I'll put it on the back or on a smaller gas jet and have it just simmering away. I'm not going to put any salt in, but we'll put some pepper. No, I won't put any pepper in because that's a flavour enhancer as well, isn't it? So back when it's cooked. And we're cooked. Didn't take too long at all. So let's just have a look at it. So it's nice and fluffy. It's nice and fluffy, and it hasn't broken up too much. So obviously the frying in the oil helps it from breaking up, which is an interesting thing to learn, isn't it? That's okay. So taste wise, it doesn't really taste of celery. It's improved in flavour, but hasn't got that meatiness that I got from when I cooked it in another dish. So, I don't know. It's nice. It's nice. And if you had vegetable trimmings, make a stock in the same way and use it to cook your rice, and then you'll be putting even less waste. If you don't have what we call it, a garden or a compost bin, then that's what I'd do. But anyway, so interesting faff around. I'll have to do something else now, won't I? I'll have to see if I'll have to make some more celery stock and reduce it down further and see if it goes like gelatinous. Gloopy was the wrong word. Gelatinous would be a more fitting word. But anyway, so I'm going to have that for my tea. That'd be nice. Kind of successes. Lots of faffing as usual. We can make some soup out of this celery waste. Let's see what it tastes like. So we've got 400 grams of onions. We've got 2 chicken stock cubes, and then we've got 200 milliliters of milk, and then we've got 200 milliliters of, no, it's probably 300 milliliters of water. I've cooked the onions and I've just added the milk at the last bit just so it doesn't curdle, but it has all curdled. Yeah, it's cooked and curdled, but anyway, not to worry. And then there was about 200 grams worth of this celery waste, so it will turn into a soup. I'm just kind of curious about what it kind of tastes like. Probably most of the flavour will come from the chicken stock cube and the onion, but I could just put it on the compost, but I like the idea of using everything up. So we'll give it a quick go. So we're using it more as a bulking agent because we've extracted all the flavour out of it. So, and I have decided what I'm going to do with that celery, concentrated celery. That will need some more liquid, but let's give it a pulse, and we're just doing something on the back of the stove which I just need to turn over before it burns. Probably should have used a better instrument to do that. So with the lead stretch, just so turn the gas off for a second, then I gas down. Yeah, it still smells of celery. We need a lot more water in that. I need to boil some water. I'll pause. Right, we've got 300 millilitres of liquid. I think that'll be enough. Let's see, we can always add a little bit more. If I added too much, bit of mistake. That certainly needs some more liquid in it. I reckon we'll put in 100 millilitres. It's going to make quite a bit, so we'll put in 100 millilitres of milk, and then another 100, and then that's 100 millilitres of milk. And then I think another 100 millilitres of hot water. Ish, maybe a little bit more, but we're all friends here, aren't we? And another 100 millilitres of water. It's difficult to judge because of that puree. You know, we extracted a lot of liquid from it. So, which obviously the more liquid we have now, the less concentrated the flavour is going to be. So we might need another chicken stock cube in there. Right, let's give it a taste. And then it's going to need some more liquid. And a chicken stock cube. Do you know, it's still kind of quite celery. But it's certainly going to need that chicken stock cube. It's certainly going to need some more water. It's certainly going to need some pepper. But I don't think this is going to be a bad soup. The video is going to be a bit long, right? But my videos are normally a little bit too long, if I'm honest. But I'm not on TikTok, am I? I could probably get away with another 100 millilitres. Nice though. Nice, another 100 millilitres. No, what we'll do is we'll do 50 millilitres of milk and 50 millilitres of water. And we'll just have to work out how much liquid we put in. So that's made a pan full of soup. That's alright. As nice as that. That's nicer than a lot of the soups that you'd ever buy. So there we go. That's what we can do with that leftover celery pulp. Now, if we're making a carrot stock, we could do exactly the same. The pulp that was left over from a carrot stock, or any kind of vegetable stock, you could do exactly the same. Not entirely advisable because it's an inferior product. You might as well just make a whole celery soup or a whole carrot soup. But an interesting lesson all the